Hockey fans, welcome to IFY with Sean Croft and Chris Hessel.
What have we done? Why?
Oh my goodness gracious. I have no idea that question.
This is not what I thought today was going to be like.
We're going to have to rethink what to call the show when they change the name of the team to the New York Tire Fires.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we firefighters.
We could be the firefighters, yeah.
That's all we've been is firefighters for this team for the 6
Yeah.
years that we've been doing this.
And you know what? It's amazing to me that, we go through, we've gone through the last few years watching this team, and it really amazes me that there's still a clown shortage in the world.
Yeah.
Considering all they have to do is look at Uniondale, and there's no shortage of clowns there.
You had a really good...
From the top down, there's a lot of clowns.
Well, you had a really good line last week when we got off the air about send in the clowns.
Send in the Clowns Entertainment. Yeah, I don't even know if they're still a sponsor, but the Islanders may want to consider bringing that back. The clowns are already in. Clowns are already in. I guess for me personally, it took me this long to recognize a new addition to the circus, if you will, and that would be Garth Snow. After years and months and weeks of defending the man,
I know.
I can no longer do it. I am off of his bandwagon completely. This is not the right way to build a team. Okay, you give a guy time, you give a guy his space, and you try and instill as much confidence as you can. And I have to say, when it comes to building a team, the mix never seems to be right. And the decisions seem to be questionable at best. And for a team that can't afford to bungle assets, this team certainly does it a lot. Like I said, I mean, it's not. You're not going to win a championship with that kind of a model, but the Nashville Predators seem to get it down every year. Have made the playoffs in half of their existence. The Dallas Stars certainly seem to be pretty competitive year in and year out, even though they don't always make the playoffs. Colorado Avalanche seem to be able to turn it around quickly. You look at the St. Louis Blues, which obviously now they're attracting and going after more of the bigger names, but haven't always been that way. There are models out there that this team can follow, and have failed to do so, and have tried to reinvent the wheel, have tried to think outside the box, but the ability to think outside the box is lost on the individuals running the organization, and that's where we stand today. And that's the reason why we're sitting here groaning and moaning to start the show.
What I can't understand is that when you look at what was going on with this team a little more than a year ago, I cannot believe that this is the conversation we are having again. And I know that we're not supposed to do this, technically, but let's be real, we're not making any money off of this, despite our every effort. So I'm going to play this.
And again, Fleury has to retreat. In comes Cizikas. Casey Cizikas works his way in. Scores! Casey Cizikas! And the Islanders lead by 2!
That was Game 4.
It's probably the last playoff game you'll see at the Coliseum. I can tell you that much, because I don't have much faith for next year either.
Let's go. I'm gonna cue that up again. I want you to hear. Listen to the building.
Poked away by Wisnowski. And again, Fleury has to retreat. In comes Cizikas. Casey Cizikas works his way in. Scores! Casey Cizikas! And the Islanders lead by 2!
This was a New York Islanders team
You know,
that nearly pushed the Pittsburgh Penguins to 7 games.
I'm not going to lie, this upsets me to listen to this again. It really upsets me. They talked about this on the Trade Center show. They said, actually it was on NHL Network, they said this is a team, I think it was Craig Button said, this is a team that put a scare into the Pittsburgh Penguins. Trust me, this is a New York Islanders team that put a scare into them, and basically they said they have no idea where they're coming or going. So, you look at a league where more than half of the teams make the playoffs, and you have to, right now, you can't help but think that, you know, it was a short season. It's just an exception to the rule. It's one of those random seasons where a team makes it. You know, certainly a lot of the young players that contributed to that regressed. Bailey, Cizikas wasn't great, and it was, you know, was up and down with the injuries. You know, there were holes on this team. Of course, Mark Streit left, but you know, that's a hole that should have been replaced that wasn't. And
right.
Was he great? No, but you know, he definitely contributed to the team being better. I mean, he helped put up points. You know, so certainly I don't think that, you know, this was a big, you know, and then there's Molson, who was good. Presumably you get the upgrade in Vanek and you go from there.
But the first line wasn't the problem. The first line was the most consistent thing we had.
I don't even think the offense was the problem. The defense and the goaltending was the biggest problem.
Yes,
you knew
because
it,
Nabokov kept us in games last year that we should have lost.
Yeah, and if you go back to when they made the original Vanek trade, we both loved it, and you know, I still think, you know, I still liked what they were trying to do. What I didn't like was, you know, the first thought in my head was, well, that's a lot of assets to give up, but they must know that they're going to be able to re-sign this guy.
Right.
Which means that they know what they're going to have to offer. But the other caveat of it was Garth saying in October, and this is where now I go crazy.
Yes.
And where when I see people that are still making comments about, oh, you know, leave it to the TSN guys to call the Islanders a tire fire, leave it to them to pick on this and that, is defend that. You cannot defend that. When the general manager goes on record, when they were 4-4, and you brought it up last week, and says mediocrity is no longer acceptable. This is not a rebuild. Mediocrity is not acceptable. 500 is not acceptable. I'm not happy with the way my team's playing, and you know, this, that, the other thing. When you go out and then make that move and then go into a hole for the next 5 months, there's a problem there.
Yes.
Okay, there is a huge problem there, and you don't, and the organization does not deserve to be defended in that case. Does not deserve the benefit of the doubt. The Islanders' biggest mistake was not making a follow-up trade when everybody saw that the defense was becoming a problem. Travis Hamonic was struggling. Andrew McDonald was struggling.
And then got injured.
Lubomir Visnovsky went out with the concussion, and this team did absolutely nothing to address the defense other than get smaller by calling up Aaron Ness. I love Aaron Ness. Great, you know, great little player. But they did nothing to address the defense at the NHL level with an NHL type of defenseman. Why? Because most of the guys that were on the market had contracts. And I've been saying it all year, and I've been complaining about it all year. But Tim Gleason was a guy I would have liked to have seen on this team as a try. Ladislav Smith I'd like to see on the team as on this team as a try. But the Islanders were not interested at all, as we've learned from this deadline, in adding any salary whatsoever to this team without sending an equivalent amount back. And at the time of those trades, they weren't trading away of getting Nabokov for these guys. Both those teams needed a goaltender. They weren't going to do that. They weren't going to deal from a position that was already weakness and make it even weaker just to add a defenseman under contract.
Yeah. And let's not forget that after the team won 4 games in the month of November, this is a month after, roughly a month and a half after 500 is unacceptable, Jack Capuano was allowed to retain his job on December 1st, and I wrote on the blog all of the reasons why he should be gone.
Yes, you did.
And there was no reason, and I don't care what any of you have to say. You can come at me on Twitter, you can come at us in the email, you can come into the chat room here. I don't want to hear you defend Jack Capuano. I don't want to hear you say how we're rough on Jack Capuano. He's a crap coach, he's got a terrible system, and this team really beeped the bed when they let him keep his job on December 1st.
I mean, I'm watching teams that are injured right now that are playing. Look at the Detroit Red Wings. Okay, Mike Babcock.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, continue.
You win 4 freaking games in a month, and 500 is unacceptable, and a team goes to the playoffs, and a rebuild is done, and you let him keep his job.
And the point that I was getting at.
I need to close this window before the neighbors call the police. They're going to think there's a domestic disturbance.
Yes.
We'll be on Cops Reloaded.
Yeah, good point. Everybody else, hey, I know those 2 kids. I look at it series that are playing kids in the lineup and everything. And guess what? They're putting up 5, 6, 7 goals a game. I mean, they have had trouble scoring all year, but they're putting together systems. They're winning games. This, that, the other thing. Mike Babcock's a very good coach. It frustrates me to think about what a coach like that would do with this team, because I think that this team, believe it or not, I don't think that this team is too far off from being a playoff competitor. Defenseman, goaltender. I don't have faith in the current management of this team.
No.
Ownership, general management, the guys that are helping to make a decision. I don't have faith in them to make the correct decisions. I'm nervous for what our goaltender is going to look like next year. I am very nervous because by all accounts,
it is what you're looking at now.
Because by all accounts, and Staples said it in his chat the other day, by all accounts, there is interest in bringing Nabokov back as a backup. Okay, they're starting Anders Nilsson because they're obviously trying to see what they have in there. They got to figure out how many goaltenders are we adding this offseason, because I think obviously at this point we know Poulin and Nilsson are busts. I mean, it just looks that way. It looks like, I mean, Nilsson probably has a little bit of a longer leash just because of the B12 deficiency or whatever it was that he was battling last year, and the fact that he hasn't started as many games.
And we have seen good things out of him.
We have seen good things out of him. It still boggles my mind that a guy who's 6'6" gives up as many goals over his shoulder than he does, but I think that's why you're seeing Nilsson start a lot of these games. This team is realizing that they have to evaluate their organizational goaltending depth. Because right now, you bring Nabokov back, you still got to add 2 other guys.
Yeah,
that's what it's looking like. You know, you have Eamon McAdam that you drafted, so they're trying to see where are we, what have we done here, and that's why you're seeing Nilsson get all these starts. Now,
you could finish your thought.
I was gonna say now it scares me. Because you look at what's going on around the deadline, and we'll probably talk about some of the other deadline moves and give opinions, since we can talk about other teams that actually give their fan bases hope. You look at all the goaltenders that were traded. I mean, it was like something ridiculous, like 12 goaltenders changed hands, and it's like, wow, would have been nice if one of the teams that desperately needed to address goaltending. And this is the thing that I think Jamie McLennan and Kevin Weeks were crushing the Islanders on all week, was that they didn't go out and address the goaltender. I think it was Weeks who said, Yaroslav Halak, yes, he's not signed past a year, or maybe it was McLennan. One of the goaltenders on the show on the NHL Network said, yes, he's not signed long term. Yes, he's an unrestricted free agent in 20 games. But what is the harm in a team like this that's basically giving tryouts for next year? What's the harm in going out, giving up minimal assets to go out and get,
because we need our draft picks, Chris.
Yeah,
we need the draft
picks. To go out and get Yaroslav Halak, because listen, just like the team realizes that that options are starting, just like a team would realize that goaltending options are going by the wayside, a goaltender should understand their market, unless they grossly misjudge it like Martin Baron did a few years ago. But a goaltender looks at this market. They know that there's 60 jobs. Guys like Yaroslav Halak want to be one of the 30 that's starting. So you look around the league and you go, well, there's not many jobs. Well, if he did well with the New York Islanders this year, there's no doubt in my mind that he would have re-signed a contract to stay here for a few seasons. But the Islanders didn't go off and do that. They've decided to run with Anders Nilsson and see what they have in there, and that's fine. I don't blame them for trying to see what exactly do we have. How much is the damage that we have to fix in net in the off season? And it looks like that's where all the focus is going, which is great. But the fear there is that means that there will be little to no focus going on now. How do you fill that left wing top line hole, which you had Molson, you've replaced them with Vanek. They're both gone now, and you don't have anybody to step into that spot. And B, the defense doesn't look like it's going to be addressed either. So my fear is that this team, every year they have one move in them that they go and they put on a pedestal, and that's going to be goaltending this offseason. And we're going to sit here and go, great! Where's the other moves?
Right.
And we're going to be sitting there in silence, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And
if we even sign that goaltender, they might address it. They might address it by
somebody great. It's going to end up being a James Reimer or a Cam Ward or a Peter Grubauer. I don't know.
But you know what? At least Cam Ward has won a damn Stanley Cup.
Well, this is
at
true.
least he's been there, because you and I scream and yell about we never have a guy that's been there.
You know what? And you're right.
At least he's
I was just going to say, and that would fit into my profile of get somebody on this team who's been to a conference final or even a Stanley Cup final in the past decade. That would absolutely fit into it. I have no problem with that, but as long as you're not giving up a lot. It frustrates me because I do think there are better options. I think Jonas Hiller is a better option. I thought, my guy really was Luongo. I really thought he was going to end up getting bought out. I really thought Luongo was going to get bought out. I really had little interest in taking on that 7 or 8 years left on the contract, but if it had come cheap enough, I definitely would have done that. But it is what it is at this point. You had interesting comments though on Twitter yesterday from Brett Yormark, who tweeted out that he understands fans' frustrations and wanted to give his guarantee that by the time the Islanders get to Brooklyn, they will be big time. You have my promise. My attitude is I'll believe it when I see it. I don't
Yeah.
think that this team, under the ownership of Mr. Wong, under the general managership of Garth Snow, can ever
The
be
lack,
big time.
the
I
lack
don't
of
think
a
they have
team
the-
president, it's everything.
I don't think they have the resources. I don't think they have the brain power to get this team to be big time. So believe it when I see it. Depends who's running this organization, and it depends how much say Mr. Wong has. I mean, if Charles Wong loses some of his say because Yormark's saying, listen, we're paying you to be here, you're going to do things my way, I'm fine with that. He can just be a figurehead for all I care at this point. But right now, under the current structure, under the current way that this team is managed, they will not be big time. They will not be able to accomplish what they have to accomplish to take that next step. And right now, it looks like we've taken a step back. So that next step for us is getting back into the playoffs, and we're back at square one again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It is like last season never happened.
It pretty much is at this point. It feels like it was so long ago.
Yeah.
It really feels like it was so long ago.
You know, all of us, everybody in the fan base, and every player on that roster couldn't wait for opening night. The day after, we got bumped off on a Saturday night, if I remember correctly. I think that was Game 6 was on a Saturday.
Yes.
Okay, right? That next day, we came on this show. None of us could wait until October.
Yeah.
We couldn't wait until opening night. Now, I don't care if
I
I
just
don't
want the
see.
season to end.
Honest to God, I hate to say it, I don't care if I see hockey on an Islander uniform until 2015. Honestly, I don't care whether we
It's
see
tough.
another game played before we get to Brooklyn.
It is very tough,
at
honestly.
this rate,
because
it's only going to get worse
it
next
depends
year.
on what we're going to get as far as hope next year. I mean, they're gonna trot out some guy trying to resurrect his career on the top line, be it Milan Mihalik or whatever. And prices of players are going up. I mean, everybody is, it's funny, you read comments on blogs and message boards, and people are pinning for, I'll just take Anton Strawman. Well, guess what? He just rejected a 3-year, $9 million contract from the New York Rangers. There's no way the Islanders are going to pay a defenseman a 3-year contract worth $3 million a year. I don't even see that happening. They're going to look for, your latest, greatest, cheap guy and try and resurrect a career. And that's what scares me for next year. And
it's going to be another Brian Rolston with a $5 million cap hit, $2 million.
We have to give up a draft pick, to Buffalo, either this year's or next year's. I don't see this ending very well, and I think it's going to take until Brooklyn now at this point to get back on the right. Everybody had hope that this team would be competitive in the final years of the Coliseum. I don't see it right now. I just don't see, unless they change how they offer contracts to players within like the next 2 months, unless they change their thinking on front-loading contracts and what to trade for and how to package picks, I just don't see it. And I know Art Staple hinted that that the team may end up moving this year's first-round pick. If the Islanders are thinking, if they're in 6 or 7 with the assets that they've acquired in the McDonald and Vanek trades, which we'll get to, that they can package.
Or the lack thereof.
Well, the picks, you package them together and bring in a player.
Which is what we've been crying about for years, but until they do it, I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's tough because now you're down an extra hole up top, up front, okay, that you have to address somehow, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard, I don't know. I'm you're at a loss for words because, like I said, you look at the Islanders wouldn't retain salary in the Vanek trade. They wouldn't take back a contract, even for positions that they had needs for. I'm very, as far as, I don't want to say I'm scared, because after all, it's just a sports team, but I am scared. I'm scared for what that means, because that tells me that the decision not to take back salary, not to take back contracts, not to retain any salary on Vanek's deal when there's 20 games left in the season, for Christ's sakes, that scares me. As a New York Islander fan going forward into next year, that scares me, absolutely.
Yes. And what that tells you is that these were not front-loaded contracts where the bulk of the money had already been paid. These were either back-loaded, although, let's be real, nobody signs back-loaded contracts except the Islanders, so let's throw that out the window. That means these were probably level-loaded. and that the cap hit
Well,
was the cap hit,
I mean,
and the cap hit is what you were paying them, and the Islanders had no interest in doing that.
If you're going to look at what Bob McKenzie was saying with Vanek, that Minnesota and Toronto believe in their heart of hearts that they offered better deals to the New York Islanders than they got from Montreal.
That package is garbage.
It means that they probably had to include like Danny Heatley from Minnesota, who's got an expiring contract but a hefty salary. You know, and the Islanders are probably trying to look at it and say, no, we'd rather just save as much money as we can. We need that $500,000 so we can re-sign Eric Bolton, of all people. I guarantee you that's what they're thinking.
And
Eric Bolton will get re-signed like 2 days after the season goes, and everybody will be frustrated again, and then we'll have people that are defending it and saying, well, you need a guy like that to... It's enough already.
And you know what? Heatley's a guy that this team's going to target in free agency anyway.
Probably.
So why wouldn't you bring him in now, give him time to get acclimated?
Danny Heatley and his 30 points is going to be what we target in free agency.
Absolutely. But he was really good once.
Oh, yeah.
Like Steve
when
Staios
we were in high school.
Steve Staios was good once. And
when we were in high school 8 years ago.
Yeah, and Brian Rolston was good once.
Yeah, Brian Rolston was a world beater in 2006.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, but that's what it's going to end up being. Now, all due respect, all due respect to Sebastian Kohlberg, who is a decent prospect.
He's got what I like is his hands and his speed.
Yeah, me too.
But his size,
the lack of size and stuff scares me.
And this is a small team to begin with.
Yeah, now smaller guys will do fine in this new NHL. Believe it or not, I am excited to see what he can do, because when you look at he's definitely a higher end type of offensive prospect on the wing, which we don't really have. We have some good guys at center, Brock Nelson, Ryan Strome, these guys at center. The guys that are more on the wing, the Persons, the Sunstroms, they're good guys, but they're more third line type of, rough and tumble guys. So this team, in the worst way, did need a talented winger in the pipeline, and I definitely think that they did address that. Listen, I would have had no problem with Kohlberg coming back in this trade if the Islanders were bringing in a guaranteed first-round pick. Even better if they were bringing in a 2015 draft pick. That's the draft picks that everybody wants, and you saw it exchange hands quite a number of times in this trading period. I wouldn't have minded it if he was coming over with a Lars Eller, who seems to be on the block. But no, the New York Islanders did not want to take on any contracts. They didn't want to take on any headaches. Stuck to their guns. I would have been more than willing. I mean, maybe Rene Bourque wouldn't have waived his no trade clause. Not a big fan of the contract, the player. I think he's very, very overrated. But I would have not had a problem taking back a contract and saying, okay, Montreal, I'm doing you this favor, but you got to do something for me. I'm taking this bad contract. You got to throw in that first round pick. Or you go in,
or a solid second rounder, like not a conditional.
Right.
But that's what this tells me about this trade, and I said it to you on Wednesday, because it came in so late. At first, we didn't need him at all. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I said I would almost rather not trade him and hold the max contract over his head on July 1st.
Well, this team was never going to hold a max contract over his head.
This is what I would have done. This is what I would have done if you didn't get a good return. And I would have said, you know what? Play out the season. Just, and see where this goes. Get an extra 2 months to negotiate with the guy. See if you can find a middle ground. Let him go out and test. He can come back and say, hey, you know what? We're $100,000, $150,000 off per season. Let's figure this out. All right? You figure, and I'm, okay, fine, good. And then they say they traded him. And I'm like, well, it makes me a little nervous that despite that it was the same trade, St. Louis and Callahan are gone. Molson's gone. Gaborik's gone. Hemsky's gone. Okay, that's 5 wingers. We're 6. How many teams were looking to add the winger? Well, 5 wingers are gone. So I kind of feel like our market has totally collapsed. And when it comes back and it's a conditional second-round pick based upon Montreal making the playoffs, and if they don't make the playoffs, we don't get the pick. No. That's not how it's supposed to go. It's not to be conditional on you making the playoffs. It's second conditional on whether you make the conference final or the Stanley Cup final, then it turns into a first. But wait a minute, it gets better. If you make the playoffs, since you're giving us a second, now we have to give you a fifth? When has a team buying a rental player come out on top one way or the other?
It really is mind-boggling, is it not?
It's the facts of the trade. You got more for Andrew McDonald than you did for Thomas Vanek.
I'd argue.
And if got a better return than Vanek did.
Well,
because in Washington got more.
Yes, he won't even report to Buffalo at this point. He's just going to retire and finish out his career.
But that's not Washington's problem.
But that's not
his problem.
Yes, I don't know. I'm baffled. I mean, the Molson trade didn't yield much for Buffalo either. I mean, Molson's is essentially amounted to Torrey Mitchell and 2 second-round picks, but not even in the 2015 draft. It was this year's and the 2016 pick. But since you brought it up, just as an aside, I thought the round pick this year, but you got the second-round pick in the better draft year. I was like, hey, that's a good move. I like getting a second-round pick in 2015. And Matt Mangine at this point is probably not even going to be in hockey.
No.
After the season's over, so. Manorville, great. Yeah, good. Long Island kid. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But I do like Kohlberg. I am, he's not a nothing prospect. He's certainly not a bad prospect to have in the pool.
But when you give up a Thomas Vanek,
it was a little bit of a different trade than I was expecting.
Right. When you give up a player like Vanek to a team that's trying to make noise in the playoffs, you don't get a, well, maybe prospect. I mean, yeah, there's no home run prospect. There's really no such thing as a home run prospect. But usually you would get a prospect with a more concrete upside.
Yeah, somebody who maybe, I mean, it's not a great thing that Montreal had this guy for 2 games last year in Hamilton and then sent him, back to Europe. I mean, he is a 20-year-old or whatever it is playing in a men's league that
he has 9 points in 80 games.
In a men's league that historically young players don't usually shine in. So that's the concern. Obviously, I would prefer, having this guy had already played in the AHL. I would prefer if he was still here. But he definitely looks like a guy who may end up coming back pretty soon, obviously, given the Islanders' situations. Would not be surprised to see him coming back next year and with Bridgeport, or if he stars in preseason, starting with the team. But that's kind of usually the prospect that you get. You get a guy that maybe has some question marks, but is definitely, if he hits, he's definitely a high-end type of prospect. And there's a lot of question marks with Kohlberg. Don't get me wrong, but definitely. The potential to be that high-end player. And I will say, when I watched all those World Junior games this year, I was impressed with him. Definitely a good skater. Definitely, like you said, the things we say, great skater. Does go to the net a lot, but he's small. Usually in these trades, you're getting, you'll get a first, or you get a couple of picks, or pick a roster player and a prospect with.
But maybe you get that roster player, the prospect, and a conditional pick.
Correct, and that's exactly what Nashville got for Legwand. They got Patrick Eaves, who's not great, but it's a roster player. We needed some great. We feel we need some different grit on the wing and down. We have some centers that can fill in for Legwand, whatever it is. You get the conditional third, and you get John Krok, who's actually a really good prospect. For Nashville, definitely fits into the mold that Barry Trotz likes to instill there. And then you look at that compared to the Islanders, where okay, you get a conditional pick in this prospect. But the prospect is a question mark. John Krok at least has been playing in the AHL and not putting up a ton of points, but a decent, solid prospect. But you look at that and you start to compare and you go, okay, Molson didn't return a prospect, but Buffalo kind of wanted to move him and got 2 second-round picks there. And I don't believe that there were any conditions on those picks. But so when you start to peel back that onion, you go, okay, and the Islanders are the ones that ends up with decent prospect, but a second-round conditional pick. And if they're going to get that, they have to give up a 5th, and it's like, well, what the heck kind of a trade was this?
Why doesn't that conditional pick improve if they go farther into the playoffs?
Well, and yeah, just like we had with the Bill Guerin trade.
Yes.
We traded Guerin for a conditional 5th. We all laughed. Guess what? Stanley Cup goes there for the Penguins, and the Islanders end up with a 3rd-round pick. The thing that upsets me the most is when you read Garth Snow's comments saying, on this day, first of all, he said he thought it was a quiet deadline, which obviously he must have been drunk or high or something, because it was not a quiet deadline.
No.
I think that the way that the Islanders, or the way that Garth Snow operates, it sounds like, is he sends out his email, hey, I got this guy available, everybody come call me, I'm not going to come call you, and try and sell him to you. So I don't think that the sell job is really a strong point of Garth's.
I also think that
he
in this
didn't sell
case,
Niederreiter, he didn't sell Thomas Vanek.
No, and I think that in this case, not only was he cocky, but he was greedy.
Right. And by that I don't mean selling players off. I mean selling. If you're a negotiator, you got to know how to make your position look stronger. And that's how GMs get returns. And you look at it and you go, how did he get that for? Well, he's sweet talked. You know how to sell a player. Listen, I got this player. He's young. He's this. He's that. Blah blah blah. And I get the sense that somebody says, but his contract expires, or but he's a malcontent, or but he's this, but he's that, and Snow goes, yeah. That's the impression that it gives off to me now, based on this deadline. So aside from him saying that it was a quiet deadline, when he said this was the best offer we received on this day, says to me, it implies that he did receive better offers.
Yes.
In prior days.
Yes.
And bungled this asset to the point where he's got nothing on the pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. You waited until every other winger got traded. You drove up the price on your own guy when you could have taken a trade 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, a week before the deadline and moved him and come out with something on top. Look, if you're trying to improve the team, I understand you want to get the best deal possible, and I understand that maybe you don't want to jump at the first deal, but you say, hey, you know what, this is a good jumping off point.
Yes.
I know I'm going to get calls on this guy. Why don't we leave this line of communication open? I understand you want to make this move, but you got to understand that I need to get something in return here. So instead of just shutting the door and saying, I'll get something better on the deadline day because everybody's going to want him.
He handled the McDonald situation actually about as best as he could.
Yes.
You traded him before the deadline came. You had Chris Phillips re-signing that late, was approaching a deal, it looked like, with Ottawa at the time, but it was still a question mark. Teams were still trying to figure out, what are we going to do? The Rangers had re-signed Girardi at that point. Robida had been traded, and you looked at it and you went, okay, Philly called you, and okay, great. Here's a third and a second in 2015. Great, phenomenal. And Philly wants to sign Andrew McDonald, God bless them, because the Mark Streit deal has worked out so well for them. Yes, they're in a playoff spot, but take a look at Mark Streit's numbers and the salary that he's making, and it makes you go, yikes. So God bless Philly. But, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm okay with that return. I expect, defensemen usually do return back the picks. It's the forwards that are the guys that return back your picks and prospects or roster players.
Yeah, because it's a sexy trade.
Right, exactly. You're upgrading an offense. You're plugging a hole up front on the point getters. So for me, I thought that was good. And as we went into that night, they scratch Vanek against Winnipeg. You hear the talk of Anaheim maybe stepping up their efforts, Boston stepping up their efforts.
Players and they open up the cap space, and I was convinced that's where he's going.
So everybody, looked at everything and said, oh, this is great. Snow's going to get rid of Vanek tonight, and we're going to be fine, and he's going to get a good return because he's not waiting to the last minute. We should have known better. We should have known better.
Yeah, well, the McDonald trade was a tease.
The McDonald trade was a tease. I mean, he had that was, I thought, a good value trade. I thought that was, okay, you're selling off a defenseman. I thought that was good value. But
the night that they made that trade, the NHL Network said, it was NHL Live with EJ and our buddy Steve Mears, and they said, good for you, Garth Snow. You made a trade. You got something for Andrew McDonald, but you can't get draft picks forever.
Yes. No, you can't. Your wheels are going to be spinning forever. We're gonna be stuck in the maze forever. But you know, one thing I want to address with Vanek, because I'm sure people are bringing it up. I don't know what's going on, but
we're gonna get to the chat room in a few minutes.
Okay, but one thing that I would like to address about Vanek is a lot of people saying that he didn't do the Islanders any favors with his comments. The fact that his comments were out there ruined his value for Snow and this and that. I can't say I agree with that, because I don't think that I think that at this point it's very clear of the reputation that the New York Islanders have. And I think when a player says something about, I want to test the market, I want to look at this and that, and definitely, there's a lot that goes in there, money and term, but you also want a chance to make the playoffs. And while you can't predict who will make the playoffs, you have a pretty good idea of who's going in the right direction and who's not. I don't think that those comments ruined anything for Snow. I don't think it ruined any value that Vanek had. I think he's being realistic, and I think that any team that is trading for a player from the New York Islanders looks and says, yeah, well, it's the Islanders. Nobody's going to resign there anyway. That's the reputation that this team has, and quite frankly, they've done nothing to shake that reputation. And until that happens, yeah, then a comment like that may have some value in destroying a guy's trade market. But I don't think that Vanek's comments at all attributed to the fact that the Islanders got a very, very low return on an asset that they should have gotten a lot more for, that they should have done a better job of selling, that they should have moved when they had the opportunity for, when you had bidders that were giving up, lots, that wanted a guy to get acclimated to their team, before the trade deadline. The Islanders had the opportunity to, I believe, that the Islanders had the opportunity to get a better return. Now we'll never know. I mean, it won't come out of, the Islanders didn't take this pick. Maybe it'll be hinted. I mean, like I said, McKenzie hints, but even that, it doesn't mean that just because Minnesota and Toronto believe that they had better offers doesn't mean that they were better offers. I mean, of course, but that's all part of selling selling the things that you have available. Toronto believes. That's fine. They probably did a heck of a job trying to sell it and saying, we believe that this guy is this. This guy is great. Look at what he's done with this. This guy is phenomenal. Look at that. And maybe you look at it from our perspective and go, that guy's not great. But maybe Toronto did a heck of a job selling him. And maybe Toronto, but that's all part of it. And I don't think that Snow knows how to do that. That's where I think you fall, because you look at, the return for a guy like Niederreiter. You look at the return for a guy like Vanek. I think that the Islanders play the woe is me card more often than not. And, well, he was going to re-sign with us. Maybe he would have if we had a better building, even though we're moving to Brooklyn in a few years. Well, this and that. Well, we offered a good deal. No, you didn't offer a good deal. You offered him the same contract that he has now.
Yeah, and if you were really concerned with a new building, and if you were really concerned with keeping your players here and impressing them with a new building, you would have gotten out of this Coliseum lease a year early. And we would go to Brooklyn next year.
So the whole Eeyore thing is kind of what strikes me when I look at Garth Snow in this trade deadline. I think that he played the Eeyore card a lot, and it was a woe is me thing, and so when I see that, I get the sense when I look at his historical trades and read his comments and hear what he has to say, I get the Eeyore sense. I get the sense that his negotiation strategies is not very good, and he doesn't know when somebody refutes a player that he has out there, he doesn't have a good comeback for it. It's just, well, he's Thomas Vanek, you got to give me a first-round pick and a solid prospect. Well, but the guy's going to leave. Well, he's Thomas Vanek, so you got to give me. I don't think that he knows how to say, yes, but look at this guy playing with my star player. You Minnesota Wild, you put him next to Mikko Koivu, all of a sudden he'll be putting up all these points. You already got a solid guy and this and that. Look at your roster with this guy and this and that and the other thing. You're really going to let, Suter and Parise's prime years go to waste? You're going to have this guy? Listen, Vanek's from there. He wants to go back home. He'll perform even better. He'll be in better shape than he was here. Yeah, he got off to a slow start and this and
You're
that
the favorite to re-sign him,
right?
So I need something in return.
I don't think that he did the job that he had to do selling it. Listen, your draft pick's not going to be good anyway because you're all going to make the playoffs. You can see that team. Your team's about to go. You got, Backlund is starting to perform. You got kids that are stepping into the lineups and this and that. That you're not going to miss the playoffs, especially if you get this guy. Your draft pick's not going to be great. He's got to be included in that draft pick's got to be included in this trade and this and that. But no, I don't think that there was much of that. Again, I'm not a fly on the wall for these negotiations. But the only thing we can work on in our capacity is look at historical trades, look at comments, piece things together, and I think that that's a weak point of this guy's thing, and I think that the whole league knows it. And when you look at the body of work, it's not over 7 years. It's not great. Body of work is not great. Everybody talks about, well, the Ryan Smith trade. The Ryan Smith trade was a phenomenal trade, but that was Snow building a team the way he wanted to build a team. I don't like these prospects. They're not mine. I'm not a fan of them. He'd been around them. He'd been around them when he was the goaltender for the team. Maybe he saw something he didn't like, attitude. Fine. I trust him for that. Great. So he's starting. Okay, good. Let him. Well, he's building his own prospect pool.
But it was like the 2001-2002 season. You get a team that's going into the playoffs. They're making some noise. You made a good trade at the deadline. You give everybody all this hope.
Yeah.
And then it collapsed right after that. I mean, 2001-2002 was different. At least the Islanders were a consistent playoff team for those 3 years that followed, 2 years that followed. But they never built that team farther the way that they should have. 2006-2007 is just like last year. You got all of our hope built up, and then it collapsed.
Yeah.
And 2006-2007, and we played a really solid series against Buffalo, almost as good as we played against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you didn't address anything to make that team better. Now, I know you lost Jason Blake, and I know that you lost Ryan Smith, who went on to the Maple Leafs in Colorado, and then the Kings, and then the Maple Leafs,
not
the Maple Leafs, the Oilers and the Ducks, and did a whole lot of nothing.
Both of those guys, yeah.
But you didn't do anything. You didn't resign either one of them. You didn't sign Chris Drury. You didn't sign Scott Gomez.
Well, remember,
and obviously, none of these guys became anything. So in retrospect, it was okay that you didn't sign these guys and get stuck in cap hell. But the problem is, in that moment, you didn't do anything to address the fact that this team made the playoffs and there's an upswing.
Don't forget that he tried to trade Blake at that deadline.
Yes, he did.
And
Blake scored a hat trick in that goal in that game, and he cried on the ice in the first period when he was so overwhelmed that we didn't trade him.
Yeah, because they think that they knew at that time that they weren't going to be able to come to an extension, and I think that they looked at that and I think it came after the trading bell or whatever, if you will, which I think is why they were trying to trade for Smith. I think that was going to be the trade there. We're going to add this guy, but we're going to lose this guy. So that was him starting out as a GM, building my prospect pool and this and that. And listen, he's had some decent picks, some not great picks. But for a GM, while there is something to be said for it, where a GM is gonna make his money, and have his legacy built is, what have you done to improve your team? What when you go out on a limb or make a gutsy move, what is it and what did it do for your team? And secondary is going to come, people think of all the draft picks and this and that, but secondary is going to come, finding those gems in the draft and then re-signing them. A lot of people make a big deal out of, well, he's got, he signed Tavares, he signed Oposo, signed Grabner, this and that, and the other thing, found these guys on waiver wires, Molson he found, and that's fantastic. So he's phenomenal at signing guys who have absolutely no leverage.
Yeah.
And people talk about, well, he re-signed Oposo and this and that, and Tavares, okay. Again,
they were restricted free agents.
Free agents and had no leverage and took backloaded contracts because guess what? Restricted free agents don't have that leverage. They don't have a leg to stand on. And to people that are making $800,000, you're telling me you're going to sign me for $2 million next year, $3 million the year after that, $4 million the year after that? Yeah, fine, sign me up. Right now, there is absolutely no reason for John Tavares to stick around after his contract.
And that makes me very nervous.
And that scares me.
If he makes it that far. That's the point I wanted to get to next was how. Now, I don't know John Tavares on a personal level so far. From what we've seen, he seems like a good kid. He seems like a loyal guy. But what's to say that after a year in Brooklyn, he says, trade me. I can't. I want to win a Stanley Cup.
I don't think he'll ever say trade me. That's what I think separates him from other people. I don't think he'll ever say trade me.
Now, the thing that Brooklyn's going to hold over his head that no other place is going to hold over his head is the endorsement money he's going to get for playing in Brooklyn.
Money
and I
talks.
think
Listen, this team, this is a top 5 player in the NHL. If the Islanders screw this up somehow, God help them.
Shut the doors. If you
God
lose,
help them.
if you lose John Tavares, shut the doors.
But they
Move, and then at that point, move the team to wherever, because you can't rebound from this.
part of it is you got to help
You
the guy
can't.
out. Why is it that Pittsburgh is constantly looking for a winger for Sidney Crosby, and we're constantly bringing in guys who couldn't crack the NHL roster of teams to come in as top 6 tries? Why?
And Pittsburgh
that?
went out, and as soon as they got Crosby,
no
they
excuse
started
for that.
spending money, and they were in the same situation we were
Pittsburgh
in.
was
no
in trouble,
building,
right.
we're going to move,
Pittsburgh was
we're
in
going
trouble,
to
but you know what? They went out and spent the money to get Ziggy Palfy. They went out and spent the money to get this guy and things like that. Listen, we're trying. We got to get this kid. These guys. We got to give him some NHL players to play with. We don't have money, but we're going to spend it anyway because we're going to sell a lot of tickets because this kid's going to fill the building and the team will be exciting to watch or whatever, this and that. And they lost a lot of games in his first year, but they were selling out that place. They took that money, they invested it in their star athlete and in players to play with their star athlete, and you look at where they are now. Yeah, okay, they had a few bad drafts that brought them the Marc-Andre Fleury's and the Evgeny Malkins. So did we. We had a few bad drafts, and one of those players isn't even here anymore.
Yeah.
Traded him for a third-line grinder. So.
But we got a draft pick out of that.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the third-round draft pick. You're right.
Yeah. And we got another guy.
Thank God for the draft.
Another guy who can barely get off the bench. Meanwhile, we passed on Shen and Myers and, throw a dart at any of the guys that
Well,
were in
those
the
guys
top
are
10.
struggling themselves too. But
Yeah, but you want Josh Bailey over those guys?
no.
No.
I didn't then.
And when they drafted Josh Bailey, everybody said, who? Nobody knew who Josh Bailey was.
Well, it shows, as far as the centers in that draft went, it shows what I know. I wanted either Wilson or Hodgson.
So did I.
Although, Hodgson's already on his second team. Vancouver did a smart thing with Hodgson. They could tell that it wasn't working there and sent him to Buffalo. And listen, Hodgson's done quite well for them over there, and that's good for him. It does make you wonder though if we rushed Josh Bailey, we rushed Niederreiter, we rushed.
Well, not only did we rush Niederreiter, but then we didn't let him play.
Yeah, well, that's another story.
You brought the guy here, but you didn't let him play in Bridgeport.
That's why, Brock Nelson's come along as nicely as he has, because although they didn't play him earlier this season, he had the Bridgeport experience. They brought him along. They didn't rush him. They brought him along slowly, the way that you had to bring it. And that's why I think Ryan Strom's going to be okay. I was upset when they sent Strome down earlier this year, but you look at what Strome's doing now. I like the way Strome's played. Look at Anders Lee, how well he's been playing. And I guess we'll get to the current players at some point in this show. But there are, but Anders Lee's going to be a restricted free agent. So we'll see how they do that. But it is frustrating, given that they absolutely should have gotten and could have gotten a better return for Thomas Vanek, and they didn't. And that's where a lot of the frustration comes from this week. And you couple that with the games, and so a lot of people are, well, we don't know. How do we know? Let's know how to better offer the blah 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 blah. Yeah, we don't, but I think you can have a pretty good idea of we do, because the Detroit Red Wings were a team that was interested in Vanek. The Kings were interested in Vanek. The Ducks, it seems to go back and forth. Were they not interested? I think that all these teams definitely had interest and definitely made calls. But the thing you kept hearing was the price was too high. The price was too high. The price is too high. Again, Detroit gets leg one for a roster player, a conditional third-round pick and a good prospect. Molson brings back 2 second-round picks, guaranteed second-round picks, and a throwaway player. Gabrick brings back I don't want to say a throwaway player because Fratton is still young, but a struggling roster player, in a third, and then the New York Islanders bring back a conditional pick, condition on the other team making the playoffs, and as a congratulations, here's a 5th that we'll give you for making the playoffs, and a prospect.
Why and why?
And a prospect with
why?
And a prospect with some question marks. Definitely.
It's like, here's your cookie. Good for you.
Thomas
Vanek wasn't enough to get you there. Here's a pick for you.
There's definitely a problem with evaluating, the market, evaluating your own talent, and not coming down from your asking price because you screwed up and gave up a heck of a lot for a player that you really didn't know if they were going to sign here or not, and you really didn't get it. You really didn't understand what it was going to take to re-sign this guy. You thought you could offer the same contract that he got when he was 23. I don't care if he got it that it was an offer sheet from the Edmonton Oilers. Somebody thought enough to offer him that. Well, market dictates and his history dictates that a free agent is going to get more, unless they really are fall in love with a place. Free agency is going to give a guy more than what they got in their last contract. And all right, fine, be that way. The Islanders thought that they could get a player for 70 games and have him fall madly in love with John Tavares and madly in love with playing for the New York Islanders and madly in love with the prospect of playing in Brooklyn in 2 years, that this guy will take a 7-year, $50 million identical contract to the one that he got before his prime started. Absolutely not. The Islanders are fooling themselves if they think that they can trade for players and have them fall in love. The only guys that have fallen in love with this place are guys that are on their retirement tours.
Yep.
Lubomir Vishnevsky and Evgeny Nabokov. Evgeny Nabokov fell in love with this place. Yeah, Evgeny Nabokov also wanted to start and knew that nobody else was going to give him a starting job.
Yeah, where else was he going to go?
Lubomir Vishnevsky was not getting top 4 minutes on any other team. Okay, let's be completely honest with the situation. I'm thrilled that they got these guys back. I think that they play good roles for this team, and I think they do a good job. But, let's look at the full picture here. Matt Moulson loved it here. Matt Moulson was not going to sign anywhere else at the time because the New York Islanders showed something to him. We're going to give you the chance. Don't have anybody else. You're this kid's best friend. Go out there with him 30 goals later. People, you still heard the questions of, well, is he really? The teams were, is he really? No, so
point,
the Islanders signed him to a fair 3-year contract.
It wouldn't shock me if we see him back. Honestly.
It would shock me. I think that.
You think that he's stung enough where he wouldn't want to?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, I think he's stung enough. He's not going to come back here. Absolutely not. He's going to make too much money. Remember, we can't pay players. So we're going to go out and find the next Matt Moulson. We'll find somebody. It'll be Matt Fratton.
Here I am thinking about.
That's what it'll be.
Here I am thinking about. Well, we have cap space because we got to get back to the cap floor.
Matt Fratton.
Because we're going to fall below it again. Oh no, but we won't because we are going to re-sign.
Milan Michalek scored 35 goals 2 years ago. Now. So maybe he'll take it.
Devin
Setoguchi's a disaster. That's a good one.
Meanwhile, why didn't you go out and get Mason Raymond when you had the chance to get him?
Well, now we can't because now
he's
having a good
year. Make too much money.
He's going to make too much money. He won't agree to get paid in bubble gum.
Ugh.
So there we are. So that's the reality of the situation, and it scares me because the comments that we hear coming out, not the Islanders not wanting to take on salary, not wanting to take on roster players, and this and that. Meanwhile, they're giving out these contract offers. Andrew McDonald, here's 4 years, $16 million. Thomas Vanek, here's 7 years, $50 million. Okay, so they have to allocate this money somewhere else. And I get the scary feeling that they're just going to allocate it to goalie, and they're not going to do anything else. And that will be in the same situation we were in this year, where, hey, we have this great top line, but we don't have a defense or a goaltender. Now, we have a starting goaltender, but we don't have a defense, and we're missing a hole. We have a hole on the top line.
Well, Anders Lee will play then.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot.
We'll fill it in there, probably. And I like Anders Lee, and he's doing great stuff, but, no.
So this is, this is as the world turns, or burns. We'll never get out of this maze. And,
I am just concerned with how long until John Tavares doesn't want to play here anymore. And if you lose him, shut the doors.
You gotta. At this point, we're so jaded, and people are probably listening to this. And put the razor blades away, everybody. All I wanted, and now I am at the point where I'm believe it when I'll see it. Everybody can sit and talk about, well, this guy, the Islanders have some money to spend. They got to get to the cap floor. I'll believe it when I see it.
There are some, not a ton anymore, but there are some nice free agents out there.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, believe it when I see it. Shock me. Make some noise. Go out and get Hiller, get Miller, get Halak. Make a trade. Go out and flip, Nielsen and some of these picks. Go out and get Edler.
I don't even want to talk. Everybody's
something.
Talking about
show me that you're going to do it.
Is John Tavares' friend, and Art Staples mentioning his name, and in the past I would have gotten excited about that, but now I've hit the point where I believe it when I see it. I will not react to something like that anymore and dream up, oh, this guy, oh, that guy, oh, this guy, because even last year we were dreaming up scenarios of, well, this guy is older, but he's a good guy for the Islanders to get. Definitely will be a guy that they'll target. They just completely went in another direction and targeted nowhere near, those kinds of guys. And it was like,
Well, we knew before the season started that at best we were a one and done, and that was a stretch.
Well, so for me now, it's like one of those fool me once things. I mean, we've been fooled year after year after year. And I think the best attitude to have is believe it when I see it. So for anybody who's, out there and sends us the Twitter messages over the next few months, just like last year and the year before that, oh, what do you think of the possibility for this? Why can't Snow go out and get this guy? Oh, I hear PK Subban and this and that and the other thing, or Malcolm Subban and this and that and the other thing. And we were all fooled. We've all been fooled for this whole entire year with all these names coming out. And Snow now with egg on his face. That's the only thing we got. Believe it when I see it. And we had the same reaction when the Vanek trade had. Believe it when we see it. Staples mentioning names, yeah, okay, whatever. Then they go out and make this move. Wow, they actually did something. But the rest of the team is going, so that means Snow's got to have a follow-up move. And we all stared and waited and waited and waited and waited. And it's like those commercials with people are waiting forever, and all of a sudden they have the big long gray beards. And now here we are with egg on our face, and it's hard to wash out of those beards, let me tell you. But that's a step forward and 3 steps back.
Yeah.
You did a good thing in doing that, but you didn't actually look to know that you were going to offer this guy a can't say no deal. You didn't actually look to see, that this guy wasn't dead set on testing the market. And if I'm him, I'm absolutely testing the market if I'm his age and his skill level. And I haven't really won anything in my career, and obviously career is not going to last forever.
Look, the jumping off point for any conversation based upon the way that this season went, and it goes back to the exact thing that we started this show with, and it has to be. It absolutely has to be the jumping off point when you discuss this season in any capacity, is we are 4-4, 500 is no longer acceptable.
That's where the frustration lies.
That's the jumping off point.
That's for me.
You can't make a like
that for me justifies all this.
Are you trying to win the back page in Newsday? Are you trying to win page 6? Coming out and make a big statement. Now, oh my God, oh, did you hear what Garth Snow said? Like, oh, he's a general manager. Look, oh my God. It's like when Flounder throws the clipboard. Oh, Flounder threw a clipboard. He's mad. Look, he's a coach. It's no different than a kid dressing up as Batman on Halloween. It doesn't mean he's the real Cape Crusader. He's not going to go out and fight crime. He just looks like he could.
Well, I mean,
with the foam muscles and all.
That's to me, so when people look at this and they go, wow, these guys are really doom and gloom, or any of our, media friends that usually like to put lipstick on pigs and are listening to this and saying, well, they're being a little harsh and this and that. Absolutely not. I don't think we're being harsh, because I think that the team set themselves a bar. Garth Snow set a bar for himself and his team when he came out at 4-4 and said 500 is no longer acceptable. We cannot be like this. We have a chance to take the ball and run with it and things like that nature.
And when we did our show on December 1st, we said that statement had zero validity because Jack Capuano was still the coach.
A coach. The defense had not been addressed. The goaltending was still an issue.
Since that statement had been made, I think the team had only won 6 games.
Yeah, something like that. So, that's what makes this all justifiable. That's what makes everybody have every right to be upset, is that it doesn't seem to be. What is the plan? That's what it comes down to. What is the plan? Right now the plan seems to be John Tavares score 100 points a year and we'll sit and pray. And that's no plan. That is absolutely not a plan. And that's what the plan looks like right now.
Let's go into the chat room. These people have been waiting patiently.
These people have been waiting. We've been pontificating for long enough.
MW. It's not just about deadline day. It's this season since draft day in June. I'm so disgusted. The Brooklyn Crew taking over is our only hope. I'm totally with you on this. Sean Capuano needs to go. How many teams would have kept him this year? Just our organization. We are quote-unquote special.
On that, I think Capuano's going to be out. Absolutely, I don't think Capuano comes back next year. But it's not going to be really noteworthy because they won't replace him with anybody of note.
No, because Liolette's going to go somewhere else now.
They don't want to pay him. Go out and find some name. Again, believe it when I see it. The caveat to all this is believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. It'll be Doug Waite, or it'll be somebody like Bob Bugner or some junior coach who is looking for a start, and they'll just throw him in an NHL tire fire, and won't have much AHL experience, whatever like that, and we'll go from there. But I do think Capuano will be gone after the year. Is that good news? I have no idea. I guess it depends.
The fact that he's still here is concerning.
Well, at this point, it doesn't matter. Just let the guy play out the year, get his contract, which will likely be his last NHL contract, and then we'll move on from there.
He'll never work in this league again.
Neither will the general manager once he goes away.
Nope. MW continued. Chris, I had faith in Garth until this season. No
so did
more.
I
am not renewing my tickets until I see what they do this summer. Which MW, you're a good man.
Right,
you're a good man, Charlie Brown. The fact that you are actually going to consider renewing your tickets pending them doing something over the summer, because I've already decided that, not that I had a season plan, but I would go to my 10, 15 games a year.
Yeah, well, we've talked about it for years, growing up and everything. Now we've let that go by the wayside.
But I have enough, there's enough opportunities to go where I would still go to 10 games a year, and honestly, it ends up being cheaper than the season tickets because I'm getting them on StubHub or I'm buying them off of other people, what have you. But I'm taking the rest of my Islander ticket money, which would have been about $100 probably to get me through the end of the year, and I'm buying my Cosmos tickets. That's it. Yeah. I'm not going back.
In a perfect world, you'd rather give your money to the franchise. Yeah, okay, I'll buy season tickets. Yeah, I could get them cheaper, but you know what? In a perfect world, the team is doing right by the fans. Teams are doing right by me. Yeah, here, take the money. You're going to invest it in the right thing. That's why Pittsburgh Penguins fans have no issue. That's why Chicago Blackhawks fans have no issue. Now, these teams struggled and struggled and struggled for years and years and years.
The Blackhawks weren't on television.
Yeah.
They had no TV contract. No. I'm giving my money.
It took Wirtz to pass away and his son to take over before they could ride that ship.
I'm whether they care or not, I'm giving my tickets to I'm giving my money to the New York Cosmos.
Might as well at this point. It's probably got to be a better investment.
Yeah, it's is it a second-tier soccer league as opposed to MLS? Yes. But at least the Cosmos won the NASL championship last year.
Right.
You and I went to the game. It was fun. It was comfortable. You know
that there's a commitment and a plan of some kind there.
Yes. There's no plan for the Coliseum or for the Islanders. It's,
somebody asked me at work the other day, can you tell me exactly what is their plan? And my first answer was yes, which is not an answer to that question because we don't have an answer. But when I really think about it, I think their plan really was, well, we have a superstar, so he'll go out and score 100 points a year, and maybe we'll win more than we lose and squeak into the playoffs. That seems to be the plan right now. And I can't even say that the plan is to tread water until Brooklyn, even with Ratner, with your Mark's comments, because at this point, we have nothing to base that on. That's going to be a complete unknown. Brooklyn is a complete unknown. We don't know who's going to have more say in the team. We don't know who's running it. We don't know who the owner is going to be. We don't know who the GM and coach are going to be. It's such a complete unknown.
Unless there's something going on that we don't know about, where Brooklyn's buying this team at the unless they're buying them in the summer.
And people will say that this summer is going to be an unknown as far as free agency. You don't know if the Islanders are going to. No, we don't know. But I think we have a pretty good idea, given the body of work over the past 8 years from this owner and GM combination, to know what to expect.
Yeah. Tim Finn, the Bridgeport kids have shown a ton. They deserve credit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not discounting what they have done.
Absolutely.
This is not about.
This is what this is about. This is the tryout period for these guys.
Right.
I'd like to see Persson and Sundstrom and all those guys come up.
But this isn't about dumping on the Bridgeport kids. This is about this team cannot make noise the way they need to make noise right now with 20-year-olds.
Right.
Because you said the rebuild is over, you can't field a team of 20-year-olds.
Right. And listen, these kids, like Tim Finn says, these kids are great. Anders Lee, I'm loving what I'm seeing from him. Strome is great. And listen, Garth Snow has found some good kids. Absolutely. Strome, Lee, Brock Nelson. Yeah, he's done a good job. And he's then signs them to their RFA deals with they have no leverage. And what happens now when these guys become 26, 27 years old, have 7 years in the league, and UFA is staring them in the face? They're going to do the same thing Andrew McDonald did. At this point, why would they not? I'm not saying anything bad about the kids. I'm saying that the Islanders' management, first of all, of the kids, namely Niederreiter and Bailey, was a complete disaster. The guys that they gave time to and brought along the right way have done well. But at this point, you have to think that these guys are going to be here for their 7 years and then leave.
Yeah.
Unless something drastically changes.
MW. Only as in regards to the tickets. Only because it is the last season I am considering a ticket plan, which I'm guessing means that MW is falling into the percentage of Islander fans that will not travel to Brooklyn on the regular. They'll go a couple of times a year, but they will not have a ticket plan to go all the way to Brooklyn because it's a hike.
It is a hike, and people who work, it is tough.
Now, Tim Finn says you can base it on the Nets. Yes, you can, but the Nets were a team that made trades that while they were still in New Jersey so that they could get to Brooklyn with players.
Mm-hmm. They went for Deron Williams.
You know, they went and made trades so that they could at least be kind of competitive going into Brooklyn. This team is not going to be competitive going into Brooklyn.
But they also did. They were competitive. They were not competitive, and they went and made the trade for Deron Williams without knowing that he'll resign there, but sold him on an opportunity. They sold him on Brooklyn. They offered him a max contract. Is Deron Williams really worth it now? No, obviously he's broken. You can see he's broken.
Yeah. Tim Finn, I have to address this. How can you state how a player is going to act in 5 or 6 years? Be critical. Don't be ridiculous. Well, you just in this chat room said Sebastian Kohlberg is a real prospect with a big exclamation point. How can you tell how he's going to be in 5 or 6 years? You're so convinced he's so good.
The only reason we can tell is because you have to look at the body of work. Again,
yeah, history repeats itself.
Thank you. And this organization doesn't operate like a normal organization. And players that are here, they leave, you read into their comments, and they go, well, there's a mess going on there. Well, they're having a hard time. Well, this and that. Well, I didn't feel comfortable. Well, this and that. Every player that comes and goes. Until things change from the top and their real plan is shown. Because right now you can't tell me that this team has a plan. I look at this and I go, what is the plan?
Tim, if you can tell us what the plan is, tell us what the plan is.
I understand what he's saying. We don't know. Again, it is the unknown. That's what I was alluding to before.
But the history repeats itself with this team, especially with this franchise, with this owner, with this general manager.
We can only speculate and comment on given what we have. And I thought that we did a pretty good job of trying to say, given A with the general managers, given this trade, given that trade, given the body of work, given what happened here, given the comments, you come to a conclusion. That's what you do. That's how you hypothesize about a lot of this. And that's how I'm hypothesizing about a lot of what's going to happen in the future. We can go to Brooklyn. Charles Wang could just become a figurehead. The Brooklyn guys could be saying, you guys are going to operate like a real team. Otherwise, we have the right to do this and that and the other thing.
Sure.
That could happen, and maybe that's what's going to happen based on your Mark's comments on Twitter. But we'll believe it when we see it. We've been pinning for a real owner for this team for years. We'll believe it when we see it. We'll believe it this team will spend money when we see it. They've offered these big contracts. Now they got to go take them and address the other holes. The hole on defense, the hole in goal, and now the hole on the top line wing. And they got to go out and do that now with the money that they have. Take the Vanek contract and split it in two and offer it to players. Take the McDonald's contract and offer it to a goaltender. Okay. You've already now here we go again. Snow has established that he's willing to offer these contracts to keep his own players. Okay, $64 million worth or thereabouts of money. $66 million worth of money. Now he's got to take that $66 million worth of contracts, total contracts over 7 years or whatever it was, and now he's got to go out and distribute that or lower than that. It could be lower than that, but he's already indicated that he's got $60 million that he's willing to spend for players if he deems them as part of his crew.
Right.
If he's going to go out and, well, Peter Regan's coming for $750K, just like last year. Okay. What happened? So that's really what this was more of a comment on is, believe it when I see it. You've made these offers. Now you got to go out and do that. Because right now, the only thing we have to work on is this is how the Islanders have always operated. Well, we offered this contract to this guy, but he didn't want to come because he didn't like the building. Well, we offered a backloaded contract to this guy, but he wouldn't want to come because he wanted to go to a team that was going to pay him $18 million in the first 2 years. Well, we offered this to this guy. We're always in on the top guys. Yeah, they're probably making a call, and he says to the agent, just take the call and we'll move on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your offer. Okay, great.
Tim comes back and says, not saying it's a plan, but you just smashed your head against the wall for an hour, and you stayed for the hour, talking about something about nothing we can control. Okay, but we're not talking
Yeah.
about things that we can or cannot control. We're talking about the way that the team is run.
The whole
and
purpose-
then he says all you can do is hope for July 1st or June 29th that he does something.
He's not.
Continue to drink your Kool-Aid. I appreciate and I respect your enthusiasm, and good for you. You are not willing to give up, and you are in a very
Absolutely.
small minority, and you have great spirit. I am not out here to condemn you, to attack you, but I'm just
Tim
trying
is
to.
a good fan.
And he's
Absolutely.
a good fan. Tim, you are a good
I know
fan.
him personally. Tim's a good fan.
You are a good fan. There is no question that you care about this team, but we are not going to drink this Kool-Aid. Tim, I don't know how old you are. I'm throwing that out there.
Well, I know him personally a couple of years.
So is he about our age?
Yeah.
All right, so Tim, then you have watched this team over the years. You have seen what they have done historically. Until there is a change in the pattern, I can't say that I believe anymore that he is going to do something, and I am tired of hoping. And I think that that is the mentality of most people. We are not complaining about something that we can change. We are complaining, and we are upset, and we are aggravated, and we are frustrated, and we are tired of the way this team is being run.
Nobody can control anything in sports. So maybe we shouldn't be here. Should Mike Francesa not be here doing what he does, talking about things that he can't control for 6 hours every day,
and getting paid handsomely
and getting
to do
paid
so?
$6 million a year to do so? That's the purpose of this. Yeah, we can't control a lot of this. Absolutely. And us sitting here pontificating about it for an hour and 10 minutes and change, whatever it is, we won't be able to change the world either. Right? We know that. But you know what?
And if we had
We
2
can
downloads
comment-
a week, and the downloads were you and me listening back on the show, we wouldn't have been doing this.
We
would have stopped this years
we can
ago.
merely comment on the problems, and that's really all we're doing. You know, we have opinions on what goes on, given what we do here and everything like that, and you know, just trying to. It's absolutely, you know, a good thing to have hope. You know, you look at John Tavares and you go, well, as long as he's on the team, I gotta have hope. Right? And believe it or not, that is as good a reason as any to have hope for the next 4 seasons, whenever, you know, his contract expires, until we get to the point where we go, oh, can we re-sign him? Please, can we re-sign him? But you know, I get frustrated, and when I look at it, I go, you know, I can't continue to get frustrated when historically this is what's gone on.
Right.
And we're at make or break time. You know, this team wanted to be competitive before they left the Coliseum. Snow hinted that we don't have many more years left here. This team we thought they understood that they had to make noise going into Brooklyn because they had to try and retain some of the Long Island fans. They wanted the Long Island fans to follow them. They needed to make noise. They needed to add players and do this and that. They talked so much about that and putting a competitive thing and taking the next step. And when push came to shove, we ended up with Pierre-Marc Bouchard as our big free agent.
Yes.
Paul. There's a problem there. There's a big problem there. And when, once again, 3 days after that, we were sitting here talking, well, you know, Pierre-Marc Bouchard, you know, it's a solid signing. If this, if that, if this, if that. We were talking about a big if again, just like we were talking about a year earlier with Brad Boyes.
Who, by the way, is on pace to have at least 20 to 25 goals and signed his 2-year extension because he gets used the right way in Florida. Just saying.
Anyway, I was not a big Brad Boyes fan, but anyway, you know, so we're at the point now where this team showed that they have serious money to spend on a player. Are they going to take that contract and up it and give it to Thomas Vanek in the offseason? I don't know. You'd like to think so.
You showed your hand.
You'd like to think so.
It goes back to what you said. You showed your hand.
And now Snow has set another expectation for himself through his actions. Not through words like he did in October, but now he said it through his actions.
Now
we know that he was willing to offer a top-line winger 7x50,
right.
And we know that he was willing to offer a top-4 defenseman, in his eyes, 4x16, which is a lot more than any of us would. I think everybody's thrilled that Andrew McDonald didn't take that. We went, oh my God, $4 million a year for the next 4 years. Well, thank you for not taking that. But hey, Snow's trying to re-sign his own players. So now you take that money and do you offer that to a Brooks Orpik? Do you offer that to somebody? No, you have to. You have to. If you don't, then everybody's gonna look and go, okay, so how did you go from wanting to offer Andrew McDonald 4x16 to all of a sudden here we are with, just for argument's sake, even though he's not coming back into the NHL, Rostislav Klesa in a tryout position, guy who's been toiling in the minors all year. How did we go from that to that? And that's what we did the year that we ended up with Ralston and Steve Staios. We went from offering contracts to the top guys in the world. We were offering contracts to the Paul Martins and the man, I can't remember, the Dan Hamhuis of the world. All of a sudden, and then we were ending up with the Mark Eatons and the Steve Staioses.
No, and then we make the trade to go negotiate with Ehrhoff, and we offer him a New York Islander patented backloaded contract.
So, and that was what I was referring to earlier when I said players. Yeah, I'd rather take the $18 million guaranteed over 2 years than the backloaded money when I'm close to retirement.
Right.
And that's what a free agent is. You're a free agent. Teams are going to be bidding on your services upwards of 15, 16, 17 teams. Somebody's going to give you, you're going to take whatever is the most money, especially if you have kids. That's what Vanek was saying. Listen, I'm not going to lie. Term and money does it for me. But that's where we're coming from. It's not that banging our head on the wall and stuff like that.
And he says that he agrees with us, but there's nothing left to be said about it. Okay, but we can't go off the air until 2015. And there are always going to be people that are going to want to discuss this. And you know what? With every passing day, with every guy that comes off the market, that gives the Islanders less of an opportunity to improve the team. So, yes, this is something that we have to talk about every day.
Absolutely,
because every day that a trade is made, or every day that a player is signed, or every day that a player refuses to sign, or every day that a player requests a trade, everything that happens moving forward affects this team. That doesn't mean go to Ales Hemsky, who stinks, and offer him the contract.
He's doing good with Ottawa.
Yeah, okay. But offer him the same deal that you offered Vanek. We're not saying that you have to go out and give a player 7 by 50, but you showed us. But as you said, you have $66 million that you are willing to invest. So invest it somewhere. Where is Plan B?
You can invest 30 of it somewhere. I don't care.
Right.
But don't invest a total of $5 million like you did last year.
And show us that there's Plan B. Show us, okay, we didn't get this guy. We need to, we made a mistake, so we're going to go get this. It's not the big piece that we need, but it's a piece. But they don't bring in a piece. They never bring in a piece. They always bring in spare parts.
Yeah, and that's really where it comes down to, listen, we'll see what happens in the offseason. This team show that they had money again. It's the new 800-pound gorilla in the room. I used to say that the 800-pound gorilla was where's this team, the team's future, where are we going to be playing? Now the new 800-pound gorilla in the room is, are you going to invest money in this team? Is Charles Wong going to be willing to sign the checks, a big money check for a player, for a even a Tier B free agent? We haven't seen it.
Right.
We have not seen it. So prove us wrong come July and. Listen, we'll be the first to admit. Listen, things are turning around. Now he's proving that he's a real deal.
Here in the chat room, Tim, I'm more worried about the Islanders losing Anders Lee this offseason. What about that?
I made a reference to that. I says he's a restricted free agent, and the guy, obviously looks very good.
He has no leverage.
He has no leverage, but
unless there could be another team that comes in and throws an offer sheet.
Correct. Listen, Anders Lee is playing great, and he had a good year in the AHL, and he was a guy who probably should have been drafted higher if there was not this question of, is he going to play football or is he going to play hockey? If he had stuck to hockey and everybody in the world knew it, this guy's not a 6th-round pick. Okay, this guy's probably a top 3-round pick. So now you're looking at a guy who is talented, and we've known he's been talented because we've been more up close to him than any other fan base. So any Islander fan who's been paying attention knew about Anders Lee and knew that this kid was going to be talented. I don't think that the Islanders will lose him because I think at this point they realize that they're going to have some spots. People are going to be leaving. There may be some out of left field trade that'll happen, like Michael Grabner. I know that the teams have been interested in him. The Islanders, if Snow or whoever the GM is going to be, I think it'll still be Snow. Determines that everything just went completely wrong for my team next year. I got to blow some things up. I got to move Bailey for whatever I can get. I got to move Grabner to fill a hole on defense. I got to move Neil. If all that happens, or any of that happens, there's going to be spots that are open. If you're moving a forward to fill in goaltending or to fill in defense, there's going to be spots. So I think that the Islanders realize. I think that the Islanders realize that there'll be a spot for Anders Lee. And I think that they'll end up coming to terms. It'll probably be a shorter, smaller money contract, another year, equivalent to the qualifying offer, a little bit over. Just, prove it. He's only going to have 20 games this year to prove.
Right. He also doesn't think that he's an RFA, but
I'm not sure if he is. come to think of it.
We'll look it up in a minute. MW, both contracts were offers they knew would be refused. Martin, Drury, etc. were all contracts they knew would be refused. It was all BS. Yeah, and I think the same thing about Ehrhoff. They knew Ehrhoff wasn't going, but we've said this about the Islanders before. They offer contracts they know are going to get refused. They don't actually want to take on the contracts, but they can say, "Well, we tried. Woe is me."
This year, when I look at what they offered Vanek in concert with the picks that they gave up to get him, and the fact that they did trade something that was working in Matt Moulson, that they trade a first and second round pick that Garth Snow absolutely adores, as you pointed out, says to me that I think that they were a little bit more sincere in their contract offer. They didn't get the point that a player will accept the same contract that he currently has, but they knew enough about what they wanted to offer this guy, and with conviction went out and got him with pretty much every asset that they had available. And I think that this contract offer was a little bit more sincere. From what I gather with the Andrew McDonald thing, I think that the Islanders were prepared to offer in the 3 range. And then when it came out that he was looking for $5 million, I think that they kind of looked at him across the table. And then decided that, okay, well, we'll offer him $4 million for the 4 years, but we're not going to give him 5 years at $5 million per. So yeah, that's what he was looking for, and he definitely was going to reject a 4x16 at that point. But that's even more than I would have been willing to give Andrew McDonald. So that's one of those situations where, yeah, they knew that was probably going to get rejected, but if that was really the best that they could do for Andrew McDonald, then I would agree with that. That's probably that's even more than I would have been if I was the GM. Would have been willing to go for Andrew McDonald. But to me, I'm not completely convinced that they knew that. They probably knew that these offers were going to get rejected, but I'm not convinced that they were just doing it just so they could say we tried. So that's why I'm going under the assumption of, you've told me that
Lee's an RFA.
Oh, okay. You've told me that
Lee and Cizikas are RFAs. DeHaan and Donovan are RFAs. Nabokov.
Well, we know Nabokov.
Anders Nielsen is a UFA.
Well, there you go. That's why they're playing him.
Yeah.
But just to finish my point, so that's why I'm going under the assumption of, okay, you've offered these deals to these guys, so obviously you think you have this money that you're willing to offer. So, if you're going to go from offering $60 million contracts to all of a sudden offering $5 million worth of total contracts over 3 players, there's a problem there. There's a big problem there. But they're going to obviously spend money somewhere, because they will have a floor to reach. And, again, we'll see what happens, but I'll believe it when I see it as far as some of this is concerned.
Yeah. All right. I think we've pretty much touched upon everything at this point.
I think we have.
All right. That's going to do us this week. Not going to talk about the games from this week. We'll get back into that. We know what happened. The
2 bad losses to 2 bad teams. Can't hold third period leads.
Same old.
Bad mistakes, by some defensemen, and Strait had a rough week.
We'll believe it when we see it.
We'll believe it when we see it.
For Chris Hessel, I'm Sean Croft. You've been listening to, and you've been tuned into NYIFYI. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and check out the website.
And welcome to the new you. We picked up a lot of new users on followers rather on Twitter. So welcome to any first timers.
We're usually happier. Well, we haven't been for the 2 months, but
that's why these guys are all still in the chat room. They know us by now. They go, oh, they're on their old tricks again.
Yeah, huh?
Thank you guys too for tuning in.
And we'll see you guys next week.